Hi, I'm Fatima Jahan Sharna from Bangladesh. I am a joint district and session judge of Bangladesh. Currently, I am working as the Senior Assistant Secretary at the Law Commission of Bangladesh on Deputation. Recently, I have completed my Master of Research from the Macquarie University, Australia, as an Australia Award Scholarship awardee. Welcome you all to my presentation. The title of my presentation is How Can Bangladesh Develop an Approach to climate law pertaining to adaptation and equity for women. We all know climate change is a common concern for humankind, but what is climate change? Article 1 of the UNFCCC defined climate change is a change of climate which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity that alters the composition of the global atmosphere and which is in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable time periods. We all know that developing countries are at the front line of the impacts of climate change, while also being the least able to respond due to their lack of resources and support from the countries. To fight against climate change, countries have adopted mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage as the most common strategic approach to reduce and manage the impact of climate change. This presentation will only stress on adaptation approach. IPCC in 2014 has defined climate change adaptation as a response to global warming that seeks to reduce vulnerability of social and biological systems to relatively sudden change and thus offset the effect of global warming. It involves responding to actual and future climate change consequences. To address the widespread spread impact of climate change and wide-ranging consequences, nations are developing domestic, subnational, regional, and transnational legal adaptation mechanisms, which has become a key area of development for national and international policymakers. Now the question is why women? Because we all know climate change impacts women more than men, particularly in developing nations, by exacerbating inequalities through a variety of social and economic and cultural barriers. Thus, as this presentation considers gender-based approaches focus on empowerment of women to ensure their meaningful participation and contribution in climate activities that have been introduced in regard to adaptation to ensure equitable climate justice for women. This has been also reflected in Cancun Agreement 2011 and Lima Work Program on Gender 2014. Conference of the Parties of 2016 in its Gender Action Plan described gender equality as to ensure and promote women's full, equal, and meaningful participation, representation, and contribution to strengthening all climate activities through decision making to find gender just or gender responsive solution to climate change. Different countries are facing different types of vulnerability in this world. If we look at this map, we can see there are some red and greens and some other colors. Red are the most vulnerable country, while the white are the least vulnerable country. Here is the Bangladesh, which is also the most vulnerable country in this world. IPCC in 2007 has defined vulnerability as the degree to which a system is susceptible to and unable to cope with adverse effects of climate changes, include climate variability and extremes. Vulnerability is a function of the character, magnitude, and rate of climate change and variation to which a system is exposed, its sensitivity, and its adaptive capacity. Now, another question is why is Bangladesh? Obviously, it is my country. And we all know Bangladesh was the ninth most vulnerable nation in 2019 in the world in regard to the impacts of climate change. Ranking in the Global Climate Risk Index are for two reasons. One is the frequency and scale of climate disasters, and another is geosocial, cultural, and economic features. Bangladesh is also the sixth most populous country in the world, whose current population is 163.5 million. The number of women casualties in climate disaster is four times more than women. Having women as its half of the population, Bangladesh has recognized the importance of women empowerment and gender equity, and has focused on women empowerment as one of its goals for Vision 2021. Bangladesh also the most active country in international and regional climate forums. It has ratified or signed almost every convention, including UNFCR 1948, the UNFCCC 1992, the Kyoto Protocol 1997, the Paris Agreement 2015, and has attended every conference of the parties of the UNFCCC. It has included the Sustainable Development Goals in its seventh fiscal year plan. The Constitution of Bangladesh has safeguarded gender focused environmental right without any discrimination, but unfortunately, which are not enforceable in the Court of Justice in most cases. There are 19 environmental laws, but only 3 environmental green justice green courts in the country. Among 19 environmental laws, the Bangladesh Environment Preservation Act of 1995 and the Environment Code Act 2010 are practiced mostly in the courts. However, due to some drawbacks provisions, such as national interest and good faith provisions, these laws are not fully enforceable in the Court of Justice. Under Gender Action Plan of Bangladesh and Bangladesh Climate Change and Gender Action Plan, the government has taken several initiatives to eradicate all these barriers. Bangladesh Environment Preservation Act of 1995 and the Environment Code Act of 2010 are the two main green laws in the country, which are used in the courts to ensure equitable green justice. These two laws can lead Bangladesh towards equitable green justice pertaining to adaptation. The very first act creates scope to fill the gap between climate justice and the present legal system. It supplements the objective of this act through its rule-making power in accordance with its section 20 of and subsection 1. Whereas the Environment Code Act of 2010 has introduced a new accession and technical branch to support the timely processing of environmental offenses by the green courts. To reach this goal, Bangladesh can also learn the lesson from Bhutan and Kenya. Both are also developing countries like Bangladesh. Bhutan, we all know, it is the only carbon neutral country in this world, and it has its constitutional protection, and women's adequate representation in conservation is ensured under its law. Kenya also the first country introduced equitable approach towards gender and environment. It has established gender commission to ensure gender equity under constitution. This presentation has follows the socio-legal methodology. And we all know in there is a saying in Bangla, Amra Nari, Amra Pari. that does mean in English, we women, we can. I'm very hopeful that yes, we women, we can, and Bangladesh will reach this destination with us, we women. Thank you all for your patience hearing. Is there any question, please?